Good morning to all. In this brief talk entitled Nurturing the Curriculum Through Online Assessments in a Flexible Learning Environment, I will share with you my reflections about the vital role of assessment in the teaching learning process. There are three key terms that I would like to emphasize: curriculum, assessment, and flexible learning. I compare curriculum as a living dynamic field upon which student potentials are like seeds that grow and blossom into plants, and the vital role of assessment to nourish the curriculum also came into my mind as we reflect on USC Day's theme, Nurturing Life and Nourishing Dreams Through Education. All teaching and learning in formal educational systems, such as our schools and universities, are situated in the context of a curriculum. So first, let's look at the three levels of curriculum representations, namely the intended, the implemented, and the attained curriculum. The intended curriculum may have been in place in the form of curriculum guides, program prospectus, course syllabi, and other pertinent documents. But the COVID-19 lockdown has challenged us teachers not just to implement the curriculum, but to redesign the curriculum in action, that is, the teaching learning processes in more flexible ways to ensure learning continuity and sustainability with the learners in mind so that what was intended for our learners will be attained. Remote teaching and flexible learning has been a response to the challenges of learning continuity and sustainability amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. From face-to-face teaching to blended learning, we now have gone fully online. Here you see the e-learning continuum. As you know and experience, the use of technology-mediated learning has its promises and pitfalls. In higher education, we know the mandate of CHED on outcomes-based education, or OBE, and now we embrace flexible learning in outcomes-based curriculum. The term curriculum comes from a Latin word currere, which means a course or track or path to be followed. Traditionally, the curriculum used to be a rigid path structured by the content knowledge base of the course. Now we have a more modern reconceptualization of the curriculum as something that is cosmopolitan with diverse orientations, multiple pathways, and practices. And flexibility could mean allowing students to choose their learning pathways towards demonstration of desired learning outcomes. There are different dimensions of flexibility in terms of learning resources, time and space for learning, modes of communication between teacher and students and among students, and use of technology, and more importantly, flexibility over goals, methods, and assessments. Now I would like to highlight on assessment as an essential component in implementing the curriculum in a flexible learning environment. With focus on student learning outcomes, our students as learners actively engage with course content in many different ways through various learning resources, via multiple platforms and assessments to provide them the opportunities to succeed in learning and demonstrating the desired learning outcomes amidst the restrictions of remote teaching and learning. Now we go to the nurturing role of assessment in curriculum implementation. Technically, assessment is the collection of information about students' learning, that is, what students know and can do. The word assess comes from a Latin word assidere, which means to sit with or to sit beside. Literally, to assess means to sit beside the learner. Assessment is a nurturing process akin to growing plants from seeds. The first stage is sprouting. Just as seeds contain essential nutrients to germinate and grow, each student has the potential to learn and grow and develop. At this stage, various forms of pre-assessments and self-assessments are vital for both learner and teacher as they move forward in the teaching-learning process. The second stage is seedling. As plants' roots develop and spread, the right combination of water, sunlight, air, and soil with its nutrients fuel the rapid growth from the seedling to a healthy plant. In the teaching-learning process, the right mix of various formative assessments with feedback informs both teacher and students towards effective teaching and meaningful learning. The third stage is budding. The transition from growing leaves to forming buds may be like the process of supporting students through formative assessments embedded in summative tasks to guide them to perform and attain desired outcomes. Finally, the fourth stage is flowering and ripening. Just as plants use nutrients to develop the healthy flowers and fruits, students also need the information and feedback from ongoing assessments to guide them towards learning success. Thus, as in growing plants from seeds, to assess is to nurture, that is to care for and support the growth and development of our learners. Since assessment is dubbed as the engine that drives learning, so we teachers assess on what is essential for the learners. In the book by Earl and Katz, Rethinking Assessment, Classroom Assessment with Purpose in Mind, the terms assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning are introduced as different purposes of assessment. Here you see that assessment for learning and assessment as learning are the formative forms of assessment to inform teaching and improve and support students' learning. In my analogy, these forms of assessments are like tilling the soil for the seeds to germinate and nurturing the seedlings for the plants to grow. While assessment for learning is something that teachers do for students, assessment as learning is something that we teachers do with our students. These formative assessments are continuous processes integrated into the teaching and learning to collect evidence about how student learning is progressing towards desired learning outcomes. Finally, assessment of learning is like harvesting the fruits, that is evaluating whether the desired learning outcomes have been achieved. So let's celebrate the possibilities. Earl and Katz further proposed a reconfiguration of the assessment pyramid from the traditional one that focused primarily on assessment of learning into a reconfigured pyramid where the base or foundation is assessment as learning. As you see here in my examples, assessment as learning and assessment for learning are formative assessments where teachers are essentially nurturing the students' capacities towards assessment of learning, which evaluates and make value judgments on whether they have attained the desired learning outcomes. So in online assessments, we leverage on their technology-mediated capabilities to inform and nurture student learning. We can customize our quizzes as assessments for learning and use the information they generate to just-in-time teaching. There are various online tools that we can use to give immediate feedback on students' progress, identify gaps and students' misconceptions, and address them in the design of their learning experiences. We can promote self and peer assessment in online discussion fora and use online learning analytics to describe collective class performance as well as individual student performance and how well our test items work through item analysis results. Here are our sample online assessment tools I've used in Canvas Learning Management System. You see here that one module contains various forms of assessments, beginning with self-assessment and a diagnostic quiz as a pre-assessment, to discussion forums, assignments on performance tasks, and unit tests. For quiz results, we can use the information provided by quiz summary, question breakdown, student analysis, and item analysis to inform and redirect our teaching and learning design. We can also use speed grader in assignments and quizzes or tests to score and give feedback on students' work through annotations, comments, or a video clip such as this. The scores we put into the rubrics also go directly to the grade book for evaluation and grading. Alexander Pope once said, "As the twig is bent, so grows the tree." So here we use various forms of assessments to challenge students, to engage them in reflecting on their own thought processes, to help them find a way around some difficulties in order for them to develop their fullest capacities to thrive in a volatile, uncertain, complex, changing, and ambiguous world. In short, the VUCA world. While tests may be popular forms of online assessments, we see the limitations of relying merely on tests or quizzes. In the article, A Teacher's Guide to Alternative Assessments, the authors propose an assessment ladder towards flexible alternative assessments. They claim that teachers who use written tests only and no alternative assessments as basis for grading are at ground level 0. Teachers at level 1 are those who integrate and use at least one graded alternative assessment as summative measure aside from tests. Teachers at level 2 are those who embed formative assessment in alternative assessments as summative measures. These are teachers who use assessments for and as learning, who allow students to reflect on their work by providing them feedback before they submit the final output for grading. Teachers at level 3, the highest level, are those who allow flexibility in summative assessments. Students can choose any medium to demonstrate their learning outcome. And since this ladder is a hierarchy, teachers at level 3 have the attributes of level 1 and 2. So for us teachers, where are we now in the assessment ladder? Here are some online formative assessment tools and platforms aside from those provided in Canvas Learning Management System. Interactive polling and quizzes are very powerful tools to inform us on what students previously know, so we can identify gaps and address them in our learning design. Some of these sites, like those in simulations, are specific to teaching science and math. Thus, we complete the teaching, learning, assessment cycle for students to grow and develop their fullest potentials. As we go fully online or in flexible learning modes, we realize our roles as teachers have shifted from being actors on center stage to directors at the backstage or guides on the side. And students' roles shifted too, towards being active creators of their own understanding as they gain more learning autonomy and accountability in their own learning. And assessment is like a zipper that closes the gaps, the gap between teaching and learning. Finally, let me close with these quotes. Each assessment was an opportunity for feedback and help, and not a dreadful exercise in humiliation, by Alex Clarkson. One looks back with appreciation to the brilliant teachers, but with gratitude to those who touch our human feelings. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is the vital element for the growing plant and for the soul of the child. And I must say that warmth may be felt by our students as we engage them in constructive, positive assessment experiences in a flexible learning environment. Indeed, all assessment is a perpetual work in progress. Just as a plant is ever growing towards its fullest potential, so is the learner as the teacher literally figuratively sit with them in their journey towards learning success and self-actualization. So let's keep going. Thank you for your attention.